I want to start with you, Dan Goldman, because you can take what Liz Cheney said about the toxin. You can lay it over the result, at least, or the conduct of Republicans during the first impeachment trial. You can lay it over the result or the conduct of Republicans during Donald Trump's second impeachment trial. And I wonder what you think when you watch this runaway train, this Frankenstein that Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell helped build, helped assemble. Now, a clear and present danger to the integrity of our country's elections.
What we saw in the first impeachment, it was a completely circular straw man argument. And what I mean by that is that the Republicans decided early on that they were going to claim that our investigation was partisan. It wasn't. The witnesses that we had were all Trump administration officials or career civil servants. There wasn't a single Democrat, political operative or anyone in the Obama administration, et cetera. But what they wanted to do was create this veneer of partisanship. Then they turned around and claimed that the reason why they couldn't impeach Trump and wouldn't impeach Trump is because the investigation was partisan. Well, it was only partisan because they made it partisan. And that's now what we're seeing over and over and over. Brad Raffensperger, who claimed that this most recent election was completely clean, was totally legitimate, stood up to Donald Trump. Well, now he's advocating new hyper suppressive and dangerous voter laws. And the reason he gives is, well, people are concerned about the integrity. Well, anybody can be concerned about anything, but there has to be some sort of factual basis for that concern for anyone that, such as the Secretary of State, to legitimize. And we're not seeing that anywhere. And so essentially, Donald Trump is just creating chaos with all these lies, with the idea of in 2022 or 2024 saying, well, we don't know whether what we see with our eyes and we hear with our ears is actually true. So we need to go to the elected officials overseeing these elections to have them decide who won, not the voters. And that's the real danger that we're facing now.
Yeah, I mean, Dan Goldman, let's stick with Georgia. And you're absolutely right. And I think it's and Secretary Raffensperger was here. And it's a perfect encapsulation of everything that's broken. The person running against him is a horror. He's a Trump-backed person who would absolutely have subverted the will of the people of Georgia. But Raffensperger stood up to Donald Trump on the call. But you're right, was on this program defending the voter suppression laws, but couldn't answer what problem they saw because there was no fraud in the state of Georgia. I want to ask you if this amounts to a confession. I know Donald Trump isn't on trial, can't be impeached a third time, I guess, but he was in Georgia and he was talking about exactly what he wanted Governor Kemp to do. Can we watch that and answer what he's confessing to for me on the other side?
I said, Brian, listen, you have a big election integrity problem in Georgia. I hope you can help us out and call a special election, and let's get to the bottom of it for the good of the country. Let's get to the bottom of it for the good of your state. Let's go, election integrity. What could be better than that? Sir, I'm sorry, I cannot do that. I said, whoa. I said, you cannot do that. And that's why, let me tell you, this guy's a disaster. He's a disaster.
So Georgia audited, recounted their votes 3 times. There was no fraud. But it's interesting that Donald Trump is confessing to what he wanted. He said, I hope you can help us out and call a special election. Donald Trump didn't just want Brad Raffensperger to find 1,780 votes. He actually wanted a new election to be held in Georgia. How does that figure into the evidence that the 1-6 committee is gathering?
Well, I think it figures a little bit into the evidence of the 1-6 committee, but it really goes more broadly to an overarching conspiracy that is evolving as we learn more and more. And you and I spoke about this last week. That is the type of evidence that you layer onto his phone call with Brad Raffensperger. You layer on his efforts to get people inside the DOJ to write a letter to the Georgia officials to say that there were issues with the election and that they should have some sort of special election or recount or just have the elected officials decide it. and you start to look at a lot of the evidence that we saw in impeachment 2, there was a long lead up to January 6th. And yes, the Georgia case, within the Fulton County DA will focus just on Georgia. But the Department of Justice needs to take a broader look at the president's conduct and those very close to him, dating before the election all the way up through January 6th, because what we are learning in the public, and all we know is public information, there's undoubtedly a lot more information, starts to amount to some sort of a conspiracy to interfere in this election, which is potentially what's called a federal 371 conspiracy, a general conspiracy to violate the federal laws. And I think that is where this evidence falls in, that we're starting to see more and more of it come out.